Loyalty remains a myth until it's challenged. Most people never challenge it. They assume it exists. They think that kind words, shared laughs, and time together are enough to prove someone's dedication. But Machiavelli would have scoffed at such innocence. He understood something deeper. In both his world and ours, loyalty isn't declared, it's discovered. And the only way to know who's truly with you is to test them discreetly, strategically, and if needed, ruthlessly. The uncomfortable truth is that many people aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to what they gain from being near you, your strength, your influence, your attention. Once those benefits disappear, so do they. Machiavelli believed that authentic loyalty surfaces during hardship, not during peace. That's why he devised deliberate, measured disturbances not to damage, but to uncover. You don't ask someone, "Are you loyal?" You place them in a situation where loyalty costs something. That's when the mask slips. The first test: remove the spotlight. Stop complimenting them. Stop showering them with attention. Stop affirming their place in your life temporarily. Then, observe. If they become cold, resentful, or start aligning themselves with others, they were never loyal to you, only to the feeling you gave them. That isn't loyalty, it's dependency on ego validation. Machiavelli understood that ego-driven individuals are devoted only to their own image as reflected by you. Genuine allies don't vanish when the praise fades. They don't need your glow to feel their worth. In fact, when you step back, true loyalty leans in. It checks in. It remains steady. As for the false ones, they disappear, or worse. They seek a new center of gravity, someone more beneficial at the moment. Let them go. You didn't lose anything, you uncovered the truth. The second test: introduce ambiguity. Mention a bold decision, a risky transition, a significant shift in direction. Then watch. Do they show encouragement? Or do they suddenly become hesitant, critical, overly cautious? As Machiavelli put it, the loyal push for courage, the disloyal mask fear as concern. This test shakes their comfort zone. If your evolution threatens to elevate you beyond their reach, their insecurity awakens. A true friend grows with you. A false one clings to the version of you that made them feel secure. They won't confront you directly. Instead, they'll express concern. "I just don't want you to make a mistake." Or, "Are you sure that's wise?" But what they're really saying is, "Don't surpass me." This is your cue to act with surgical precision. Don't react, just listen. The more they speak, the clearer it becomes, whether they're protecting you or protecting their position in your shadow. The third test is harsh in its simplicity. Go quiet, not to manipulate or punish, but to create space. Watch who reaches out and who slowly fades into the background. Machiavelli once said, "The absence of presence unveils the reality of absence." Those who only appear when you're on display, when you're thriving, posting, entertaining gare spectators, not supporters. Genuine loyalty is quiet. It notices the silence. It checks in without needing an audience. It's the voice that asks, "You've seemed distant, are you all right?" Not, "Why haven't you replied?" This test stings because it dismantles the illusion of mutual concern. But illusions are dangerous, and Machiavelli understood that the gravest threat to any leader wasn't the army beyond the walls, but the disloyalty hidden within. Your life should be ruled like a kingdom, and not everyone who smiles at the gate should be granted entry to the throne room. The fourth test: show temporary vulnerability. Let them see you uncertain, struggling, or in need of support. Don't over-dramatize, just let them catch a moment where your typical composure falters. Then observe. Loyalty either solidifies or fractures here. Some people are only loyal to your power. They're devoted to your image, not your essence. When they see weakness, they step back not from concern, but because your vulnerability disrupts their comfort. Why? Because they weren't backing you, they were using your strength as a step up. If that structure fails, they'll simply find another to climb. As Machiavelli said, "The one who stays when the palace trembles is the only one worthy of standing beside you once it's rebuilt. The fifth and final test, the coldest yet most revealing. Give them a chance to gain through your loss. Subtle, strategic, nothing drastic, but real. Present them with a moment where choosing their own gain means sacrificing your trust. Then observe. Do they come clean beforehand? Do they conceal their move? Do they offer excuses afterward? Or do they approach with transparency and integrity? This test doesn't just uncover loyalty, it exposes their values. And unlike words, values don't lie. Here's the hard truth. Most people won't pass these tests because they're not made for real allegiance. They're shaped by convenience, comfort, and appearances. But Machiavelli didn't care for appearances. He cared about results. And the result of these trials? Clarity. You'll lose people. But in return, you gain silence, peace, and loyalty, tempered in fire, not comfort. You don't need a crowd. You don't need a dozen companions. You only need 3, 2, even one, the type who stays when there's nothing in it for them, who believes in you without proof, who defends you when you're not around. But you'll never find them unless you test. Most people live surrounded by silhouettes. People who nod while you talk, laugh when you shine, vanish when you struggle. They label it friendship. They call it loyalty. But Machiavelli would name it for what it is: camouflage. What looks like gentle affection is often just a quiet battleground of hidden self-interest. If you're not willing to step back and evaluate those around you, you risk building your life on fragile ground, placing your trust in loyalty that was never real, and revealing your strategies to people waiting to use them. Testing others isn't cruelty, it's prudence. You're not creating betrayal, you're uncovering it. That distinction is critical. People will try to guilt you. They'll say you've changed, that you've become distant, that you no longer trust. And they're not wrong. You don't. Not until it's earned. Not until they've passed what Machiavelli might call the essential trials of loyalty. Trust isn't something you give away freely, it must be earned. Not through words, but through consistent action. Something unsettling happens when you begin using these tests. Faces you thought were solid start to fade. Conversations shift. People begin to question your motives. Why? Because awareness threatens those who thrived on your ignorance. They feel the shift, the clarity, the boundaries. And if they're hiding something, they won't confess. They'll react often with subtle sabotage. That's how you know the test revealed the truth. Not every fake friend is a villain. Sometimes they're just fragile. They break under pressure. They shift direction with the wind. They need you to stay small, predictable, so they can feel stable. The moment you grow, evolve, or harden, they begin to distance themselves. Machiavelli would have said, "The weak always confuse strength with cruelty." This is where many people fall short. They recognize disloyalty. They see the cracks and they stay. Out of sentiment, out of fear, out of the dreaded doubt. What if I'm wrong? But you're not. When your gut feels tense, when your energy drains around them, when you feel the need to hide your success, you already have your answer. You're just avoiding the consequences. Machiavelli didn't seek comfort, they sought control. And real control requires clarity. You can't afford to guess who's in your corner, not if you're building something real. Not if you're climbing. Not if your words influence, your time matters, and your silence carries weight. You must know who's with you, not imagine, not hope. No. Here's the paradox. The moment you begin living with this mindset, sharp, watchful, intentional, the right people start to emerge. It's not just about exposing betrayal. Silence also highlights loyalty. When you step back and someone steps in not for themselves, but for you, that's real. That's not for show. That's alignment. And it's rare. When it shows up, protect it like treasure. Because you'll see that one genuine person is more valuable than 100 convenient ones. And you'll discover this. Loyalty doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't demand recognition. It doesn't need constant validation. True loyalty is steady. It's quiet. It's something you feel, especially when you're uncertain, when you're withdrawn, when you're not at your best. They don't vanish when you grow distant, they remain. Maybe not flawlessly, maybe not loudly, but they stay. That's the brilliance of Machiavelli's methods. They don't rely on confrontation. No yelling, no disputes. Just patterns, stillness, distance, temptation, keen observation. Let others reveal their truth. Let their actions or inactions speak louder than any declarations ever could. Most people fear this approach. They prefer illusion to clarity. They'd rather keep someone nearby for comfort than confront the cost of loss. But each day you keep a disloyal person close, you're not protecting them, you're betraying yourself. Loyalty is a stronghold, and every false friend inside it is a fracture in the walls. You don't patch cracks with paint, you remove the weakness and rebuild with stone. Start now, quietly, deliberately. Step back, create space. Make subtle moves that stir discomfort, not to ruin the relationship, but to examine what's truly holding it together. The loyal will endure. The disloyal will slip. And when they don't let them, don't explain. Don't apologize. Just allow the silence to speak. That silence, that's your crown. Wear it. Keep moving. There's an odd sense of relief that settles in when the wrong people leave. Not instantly. At first, it feels empty, like something's missing. But that emptiness isn't a loss, it's clarity. It's room being cleared for what is authentic, for what makes you stronger. Machiavelli would say, true power doesn't thrive in crowded rooms, it flourishes in clean ones. Removing a false friend isn't subtraction, it's refinement. You're not losing support, you're eliminating interference. Because when loyalty is counterfeit, presence becomes toxic. Every word they say clouds your thinking. Every nod dulls your instincts. Every grin makes you hesitate. And hesitation is fatal not only in battle, but in life, ambition, and strategy. That's why you test, not for sport, not to inspire fear, but to protect something. Your energy, your hours, your legacy. And those who aren't fully with you, they're silently against you. Maybe not by intent, but by nature. Their fragility will eventually clash with your resilience. And when that happens, they'll either retreat or betray. That's why testing must be routine. Make it part of your process, not once but consistently. Loyalty isn't a certificate, it's a security protocol, like guards constantly checking the gates. Machiavelli's greatest concern wasn't enemies at the door, it was ambition hiding inside. History proved him right, again and again. Empires didn't fall from invasions, but from internal decay. Companions turned rivals. Allies turned traitors. Why? Because no one noticed the shift in time, or worse, they noticed and stayed quiet. But not you. Because now, you're no longer just watching, you're directing. When you mention uncertainty, you're measuring responses. When you withdraw, you're tracking who follows and who disappears. When you show weakness, you're assessing intent. When you offer situations where others could gain at your expense, you're watching how their loyalty shifts. And through it all, you remain quiet, composed, exact. That silence, it's your weapon. The moment you accuse, you open the door for lies, deflections, justifications. But when you simply observe, you witness reality. People reveal their truest selves when they think no one is watching. So become the reflection they don't realize is there. Become the stillness that hears more than spoken words. And never explain your testing. Once they know they're under observation, the truth becomes distorted. Here's where most get it wrong. They assume loyalty is about how someone treats them directly. But true loyalty is tested in absence, how someone handles your name when you're not present. What they say in a room full of doubters. How they behave when the power dynamic changes. Loyalty shows its face, not when you're there, but when you're not. When your title, your influence, or your advantage is removed. So, if you ever feel uncertain, step back. Disappear. Let the dust clear. Then see who's still there when there's nothing left to take. This mentality is rare. Most are too eager to belong, to be liked, to be surrounded. But Machiavelli didn't write for the eager, he wrote for the sovereign. And sovereignty isn't found in crowds, it's found in command. The more intentional you are with your alliances, the stronger you become. Because then your circle isn't just populated, it's reinforced. Loyal by purpose, not chance. You'll feel the contrast immediately. Real loyalty acts differently. It doesn't crave attention. It doesn't ask for constant reassurance. It functions quietly. It guards you from the shadows. It doesn't fracture in darkness. It reinforces. And when you open up about your pain, it doesn't flinch or withdraw, it leans closer. That kind of loyalty is rare, but it's everything. Because when you find even one person like that, someone who steps in without being asked, someone who defends you before you even speak, you discover something powerful. Support doesn't come from numbers. It comes from truth. And here's the ultimate lesson in the loyalty test. Once you start applying it to others, you inevitably apply it to yourself. You begin to ask, am I loyal in silence? Do I stand guard for those who've trusted me? Or do I retreat when it's inconvenient? That question stings. Because true power isn't just about earning loyalty, it's about living it. Becoming the person others rely on, even when no one's watching. That's how legacies are forged. That's how lasting empires are built. The loyalty test doesn't stop at revealing others, it turns inward. After seeing betrayal firsthand, after feeling the silence of those who walked away, after watching trust erode under pressure, you refine yourself. You sharpen your awareness. Not just outwardly, but inwardly. Machiavelli believed a ruler must inspire both fear and respect. But above all, he must be trusted by the few who truly matter. And that level of trust is born from consistency, from self-discipline, from never wavering when faced with disloyal time in your own. Because if you expect loyalty, you must give it not casually, but with conviction. Not to everyone, but to the rare few who earn it. You must defend their name in silence, guard their secrets like weapons. Stand by them not only when it's easy, but especially when it costs you something. This is the ultimate transformation Machiavelli pointed to, evolving from ruling others to mastering yourself. But let's be clear, extending loyalty doesn't mean tolerating weakness. It doesn't mean standing by someone who failed your tests. It means that when you discover that rare ally, the one who withstands every trial you set, the withdrawal, the uncertainty, the silence, the vulnerability, the temptation, they don't just join your circle, they become part of your foundation. And that foundation is sacred. When that bond is formed, everything shifts. Your clarity sharpens. Your execution becomes more precise. You stop justifying your decisions. You stop looking over your shoulder because now you have someone watching your blind spots. Someone who doesn't just cheer for your wins, they defend the space that allows you to win. Someone who isn't secretly measuring your fall as their moment to rise. Most will never experience this because most people are too afraid to test the people around them. They fear solitude. They fear the truth. But that fear is the very thing that keeps them weak, surrounded by company, yet unsupported, celebrated, but never truly protected. Liked, but never respected. And Machiavelli would remind you, in the realm of power, respect always outweighs affection. So when you begin cutting ties, drawing boundaries, refining your circle, you're not becoming harsh. You're becoming precise. Precision isn't cruelty. It's self-preservation. And those who don't understand that were never meant to lead. They were made to follow, to rely, to cling. That's not your path. You are built to lead, to conquer, to read the battlefield before the first step is taken. And you do that by testing every threat before it strikes. Not just the obvious ones, the quiet ones, the ones who smile too easily, agree too often, stay close, yet remain shallow. Test them, study them, and when they failed and justify, don't repair, cut. There's a unique power in knowing that the few who remain were tempered by fire, not chosen by chance, not kept out of habit, but selected because they endured, because they stood firm while others fell, because they prove their worth not through words, but through action. And those individuals, those rare, quiet, unshakable souls, they are your real strength. They don't need attention. They don't crave applause. They only need access. And once they have it, they use it to protect you, not to weaken you. That's what makes them powerful. And that's what makes them irreplaceable. So now you move differently. You speak less. You observe more. Every interaction becomes insight. Every pause becomes a probe. Every reaction becomes a signal. And every act of betrayal, it becomes a clean break. Swift, unapologetic. No dramatics, no farewells, just space, distance, disconnection. Because those who failed the test were never meant to stay. And those who passed, they never leave. The more exact you become, the quieter your surroundings become. Not desolate or refined, not isolated, reinforced. You stop mistaking noise for connection. You stop confusing proximity with loyalty. You begin to crave silence because in that stillness, there's no act. No need to guard yourself in your own space. No need to decode every word. The ones who remain already understand your language and not your speech, but your values. Machiavelli understood this. Power draws deception. Influence attracts masks. And so, the wise must never go soft, not in discernment, not in memory, not in the limits they set. Forgive if it benefits your strategy, but don't forget. Forgetting is what lets betrayal return in disguise. Some betrayals are loud and blatant, but most, they're subtle. A missed defense, a delayed response, a closed door that should have stayed open. Betrayal rarely shouts, it whispers. And if you're not listening closely, it slips past unnoticed. This is why loyalty isn't something you test once it becomes your way of life. You stop trusting momentum. You trust consistency. You stop being dazzled by praise. You look for staying power. You stop asking what someone claims to feel and start watching how they act when you offer them nothing. Because loyalty isn't proven in your strength. It reveals itself in your vulnerability when you have no reward to offer. When your image fractures, when your path is unclear, that's when the masks fall. That's when the opportunists disappear. And that's when the real ones remain, not with promises, but with presence. And if someone fails that test even slightly, don't doubt it. Don't dismiss it with memories. Don't soften it with sympathy. You saw the fault line, trust it. Cut before it expands. Machiavelli knew. The ones who hurt you worst are often the ones you gave the most chances to. This is where many stumble. They pause. They hope the disloyal will change, that this time will be different, that the mistake wasn't deliberate. But remember, loyalty is never an accident. No one is loyal by chance. If they faltered under pressure, once they will again. All it takes is the right opportunity. So make the cut definitive. No explanations, no goodbyes, no warnings. If someone fails the test, they've already checked out. You're just confirming it. Power doesn't shout. Precision doesn't need noise. The only sound you should ever permit in these moments is the closing echo of a door. And once they're out, you don't grieve. You restructure. You recalibrate. You move on lighter, clearer, sharper. Because this isn't rooted in paranoia, it's rooted in sovereignty. In constructing an empire, even if it's only your mind, your work, your inner world, one that cannot be shaken by shallow bonds or artificial support, every failed test gives you something far more precious than what you lost. Clarity. Clarity that you're now surrounded only by those who endured the fire. Clarity that your silence carries force. Clarity that your path is now free of distraction. And that clarity becomes your leverage, your edge. Because while others get tangled in uncertainty, you progress. You act. You build. Surrounded only by those who've proven themselves. Machiavelli never said to trust no one. He advised, trust intelligently, trust discerningly, trust with strategy. Trust what has been tested not once, but over time. And when that trust proves durable, you reward it. Not with flattery, but with access, with loyalty in return. Because betrayal is everywhere but genuine allegiance is rare. And when you find it, you must treat it with reverences if it were a weapon forged to guard your legacy. Once you've examined everyone in your space and the dust has settled, what you're left with isn't just a smaller circle. It's a throne. A mental stronghold from which you operate with total clarity. No more second guessing, no more doubts. You know who's real, you know who fell short, and most importantly, you know